Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting AO-GP.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to AO-GP.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Outside of the Church, Scientology Outside of the Church podcast, brought to you by the Advanced Org of the Great Plains. This is season 9, episode 10, episode 101. And this one is inspired by one of Scientology Girl's videos, the most watched video on the Scientology Girl YouTube channel, How to Spot a Scientologist. So we found through searching through SEO keywords that how to spot a Scientologist is something that people have a lot of attention on. I find it kind of funny myself. How to spot a Mormon, how to spot a Baptist, how do those rank in SEO? But how to spot a Scientologist. And I'll get the ball rolling here on this one. Hi, Scientology Girl. Hi, Arthur. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Spotting a Scientologist. What would be the first thing? This is what I think is that people tend to think that we independent Scientologists, we're independent Scientologists or Scientologists, doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of the similarities are extremely similar, is that they stare at you because they have a good confront. They've done the TRs, the training routines, and they can confront you, and you'll find that they can communicate differently than a lot of people. You have people who cut your communication that, they don't know how to communicate. And well, just to be honest, if you've done a communications course, you know how to communicate. And this isn't a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing, but if you see that anybody that's successful in life is done well for themselves, they know how to communicate or they wouldn't be successful, whether they've done a communications course, a professional TRs course or whatever. But it's one of those things that, if you had a top 10 list, I think that, and I don't remember, I should have watched your video before we did this, but it is one of the primary things is that they are able to communicate well.
Yeah.
And I think the next one is that a good independent Scientologist grants beingness, which you don't see a lot. You don't see that a lot with people. In my opinion, the popular social tone level of planet Earth is covert hostility.
Right.
Nah, I'm just joking. That type of thing. You don't see that with Scientologists, independent Scientologists.
Like banter is so normalized.
Yeah.
Between early relationships and stuff like that. Like, how is it normal to put somebody down or take subtle stabs at their character or their body or whatever? It's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah, and then granting beingness and the social tone level, those things, they go hand in hand. And this this isn't a covertly hostile podcast towards people who aren't Scientologists, but I mean it when you hear these things, you're going to go, huh, yeah, I never really thought about that before, how these things are on planet Earth, because you've been indoctrinated to be covertly hostile with people because that's just how people are. I mean, I'll give you an example. Humor at somebody else's expense. Right. That's something you don't see a trained independent or Scientologist typically do. Is they're using somebody as the butt of their jokes. That's part of the covertly hostile social tone level. Don't you guys think?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yep.
What else, Arthur?
Language, the words Scientologists use. I find sometimes I could be listening to like a TEDx talk or a lecture by someone, and then there's certain aspects to the way they speak that I'm like, I bet you're a Scientologist.
Yeah, I have the
Just
same
from
thing.
some of the language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got any
And it's
examples?
funny because
I actually have
not off
one.
the top of my head. Well, Louise Hay, who did Heal Your Body.
Mhm.
She was a
Um,
Scientologist?
she was a Scientologist, and I believe she was quite up there as an auditor as well.
What?
And the
How
funny
about
thing
that?
is, if you go digging for it, you'll find it, but it takes a lot of work to find it. And I found out by accident, and then it made sense when she released Heal Your Body. You know, it's all based on somatic responses,
Mhm.
which I
Wow.
thought was really interesting. Sometimes I think guys like, even as silly as it sounds, sometimes I think Andrew Tate spent some time in the church. As full on as
Mm.
he is, there's aspects to him that
Like
are
what?
really similar.
Like what?
Around his
What?
confront.
And this is good data. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
but
something I feel. Yeah.
right. But it's funny. Whereas we as Scientologists, independent Scientologists, are like, I'm smelling Scientology here.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
what made you
Yeah.
think that he
Yeah.
was?
Just his attitude towards topics, because he's very well spoken. He's very careful on his language. Like, he truly understands how to use his words. And even if he makes a mistake, he'll correct himself, which I think is really impressive as well. But his confront is massive, absolutely massive.
That goes back to
Um,
my first point. Communication. Continue.
yeah, and he's really solid in that area. And like, you kind of look at the way he sits and his posture as well. It's very TR0.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I suppose can be taught outside of Scientology as well to some degree. Police seem to have that aspect about them as well, but
Well,
it's not
they're
Scientology.
right. They're a lot of police, local police in cities in the United States get trained on eye contact,
Mm.
on
Mm,
whether you look away or you look left or you look right when you talk to a policeman. They're paying attention to it.
yep.
I had one in Kansas City that he said, we're trained on this stuff, because he was like, you're different. I was like, what do you mean? And he said,
Yep.
you
Yep.
look me right in the eye when I'm talking to you. And he says, you know how many people do that? He says, it's less than 1%.
Mm.
I said,
Yep.
really? He said, yeah, we're trained to look at this stuff. And, I think that's interesting. And you have these, what do they call the people that body language,
Body
that,
language analyst or something?
yeah, something like that, where they,
Yep.
you see them on TikTok and stuff like that. What's going
Behavioral
on with
specialist.
behavioral? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things is, how does a Scientologist carry themselves too? Is, they're, like you said, their posture, you'll notice their posture, it tends to be better. They're not all slumped in and caved in type of a thing. They'll sit back, shoulders back, up straight, and their confront
Mm.
is, off the charts. And I'm going to go here for just a second, because I think it needs to be pointed out. Tom Cruise, uh, Tra-
My bad.
Travolta, both of those guys. You can, because Travolta got into Scientology, was before he did Saturday Night Fever.
Mm.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And it was a gal, it was, forget who it was that he was dating. Cruise got into Scientology from one of the actresses that he was dating as well. I forget what her name is.
That's right. Yep.
And and then you go, okay, so, and then their careers just, I mean, Saturday Night Fever put Travolta on the map back in the late 70s. And then Risky Business, I think, could be wrong, was around that period for Tom Cruise, because he was one of the kind of the Brat Pack guys before that. And Cruise
Mm.
was dyslexic, and he got
That's right.
got
Yes.
word clearing and everything. And you see how they carry themselves, and this is an important point. When you see them in an interview, and I don't necessarily mean, the ones you
Mm,
see on YouTube with Cruz where he's full on, but I mean that's a prime example in the extreme on they don't take any shit.
yeah,
They don't take any
at
shit
all.
at all.
Now, is this like would you say that, okay, so we're doing how to spot a Scientologist,
Mhm.
right? Would you say that this becomes apparent very early on with most people, or is it like from Clear or OT?
Well, I think that if they've had any of the data from the PTSSP course, which both of them had early on
Mm.
as creatives, artists, I think that made a big difference. And now, Cruz brought some of this stuff on himself as far as his behaviors with like Oprah, for example.
Mm,
And how and I'm not gonna use that as a negative thing, because I don't think it was a negative thing. And we can talk about that for a minute, but he didn't have a problem professing how he felt about her.
Yeah.
And everybody else
mm,
made fun
mm.
of him about it because I mean, you see it in movies and stuff like that. I'm in love. I'm in love. It's love, I say. Isn't it beautiful? You don't see somebody do that. And he didn't have a problem doing it, and he was made fun of.
Yeah. Because people can't
Mm,
have that.
People can't have that. Now, you could say, well, how do you spot a Scientologist? They're going to tell you how they feel.
Yeah.
mm,
There's nothing wrong with that on planet Earth. Most men carrying around a club and looking like a caveman, and they have a man cave. We can't tell our feelings.
mm,
We can't cry, and all that stuff. And when you do communication courses, you do the ups and downs course, learn about the tone scale. You're an actor. You have to know the tone scale to be an actor or an actress. What's the gal's name that did, it's the one about the dystopian future, Handmaid's Tale. What's her name? I can't think of
Oh,
her name.
gosh,
Arthur.
you got me.
She's a
no idea.
Scientologist. She's a Scientologist as well, and she's got a TR0 from hell. I mean, talk about confront.
Mm.
Uh, and it's important. It's important because the social standards are as well. It's you, it's almost like it's a Japanese custom. It's rude to look somebody in the eye.
Yeah. Well,
It's not.
Yeah.
I do want to quickly just say that, okay, so people that are listening who might not be super familiar with Scientology and stuff, they might be like, well, how is acting that crazy like Tom Cruise did? How is that considered sane behavior or normal? And why do Scientologists not frown upon it? Well, the thing is, this is my opinion, but what does Scientology do for a person?
Mm-hmm.
It makes us go back to our natural intrinsic state, right?
Mm-hmm.
The closest we can get to that is how I think I mean, look at when we were kids. We were jumping and playful, and the world was happy and was bright. And, unless you obviously experienced severe trauma, but if you had an okay childhood, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only over time that people suppressed and told you, no, calm down, sit down, don't talk. Um, and the message was kind of like, I have to suppress myself. I have to suppress myself. And then innately also,
Mm,
I mean, how many setbacks does one have before one's like, okay, you know what, I just need to calm down, and obviously that has effect on a person. So I think in Tom Cruise's defense, I think he was just that excited, that happy, that
Yeah.
unsuppressed, that
He didn't. Well, like what?
unencumbered from all these considerations.
Right. He didn't have any
mm,
considerations
mhm.
on it, and
And
that's one of the things that Scientology helps you out with is you don't have any considerations on things. You become a lot more carefree about how you feel, and you don't have to worry about. I mean, it comes down to considerations in that sense, or what other people think.
and I mean, look, if we're talking about what's crazy, okay, Tom, look at what he's done with his life.
Right.
You I could not have a better example of an OT, that was, famous or whatever, but like he really embodies that. I mean, he does a lot of his own stunts.
There's
He's
confront right there.
Yeah, he's just
Yeah, yeah,
unencumbered uh with regards
Yeah,
to fear.
yeah.
It's just,
He doesn't have
it
any
doesn't exist.
considerations about it. Right.
Exactly.
Let's go and try it. And that also comes across in the roles that these guys take on. A lot of actors, they tend to stick in a narrow channel of John Wayne plays John Wayne kind of a thing. And I know that's
mm-hmm,
it's
mm,
to the younger types are like John who, but I'm just saying, that's typically they get sort of typecast. And then you see Travolta and you see Cruise. Cruise he doesn't just do action films.
Mm,
He was in Interview with Vampire. What was that one
yeah,
I told you needed to see with Jamie Foxx, where he
mm,
plays the hitman and Jamie Foxx is the taxi driver. The whole movie, probably one of both of their best movies, and it's so outside of their comfort zone. Jamie Foxx, I mean, that guy, he's not a Scientologist, but he sure behaves like one because he's very OT in the way that he goes about things, and he's so freaking up tone on the tone scale. That's and so I mean, like electrons attract like electrons.
right.
So
mm,
they just go do. That's another thing you can spot about a Scientologist is you're like, what? He's mountain climbing? He's never mountain climbed before. Yeah, he just decided he wanted to mountain climb.
Mm,
What? He's developing a free energy device and he's also an actor? Yeah, that's Scientologists. They're like that. They go outside of their comfort zone. They go research it, learn the words, and then go apply it.
yeah.
And so they do diverse things, which you don't typically see. I mean, I can think of other celebrities, somebody that you would know of, that do that sort of a thing, something completely different,
mm.
just because they want to.
Right.
But you see Scientologists do that a lot, that they'll just go off the beaten path and do something different and come back 6 months later and say, okay, I'm ready for another movie role. I just went off and studied nuclear physics and got an online degree for it. I mean, they do
Yep.
that sort of a thing. What else you guys seen in that wise?
I was going to say earlier
Some,
on that with Arthur's comment about language and stuff,
Mhm.
my example was that Dr. Eric Berg. I was like, no, this guy, I mean, he's using all these words. Like, he's got to be a Scientologist. And he was a Scientologist. And for specific words, I think there was one or two videos where he was mentioning about cause and effect. And then there was another one, something to do with suppression.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, this guy's got to be. So.
Arthur, you were doing some research. What was it you're looking up?
so I'm just trying to look up non-actor Scientologists
Mm-hmm.
because um, um,
That's an easy
and
one,
I'm not finding any. I'm not finding names that really stand out.
right?
Um,
Because you wouldn't know who they were. They're just your man on the
that's
street kind
right.
of thing.
That's right. And there's quite a few. Like some of them are really, really good sports people. Like there was a guy here. Let's see what we got here. So a columnist, Peaches Geldof, and the personality. What else have we
That's
got
Bob
here? So a
Geldof's
lot of
daughter,
them.
I think. I mean, he's a
Okay, well there you
musician,
go.
from the '80s. Did Live Aid and all that.
So okay, David Bowie's drummer, Mick Woodmansey,
Mm-hmm.
Charles Manson, while he was in jail. Um, where are we? Actors. Like a lot of actors. Floyd Mutrux, film director. Uh, okay, an anti-vax activist, Tony Muhammad.
That doesn't
Uh,
surprise. That's another angle is you can spot a Scientologist by their opinion on medicos. medical, doctors, and I think it kind of goes without saying because it's almost ubiquitous. So psychiatrists and psychologists.
Every time I've gone on Reddit and I've suggested alternative therapies like, nutrition and sunlight exposure and, all this stuff as opposed to medication, I have been like, they call me, I think they said an ableist. I don't know what the fuck that means, honestly, but really, like, it's just insane that the first response to the treatment of ordinary things that you can fix with things like nutrition and vitamins and sunlight, people are like, no, they need medication. And it's
that's to me, that's one of the biggest control factors that people have that tells you, go ahead.
And I just want to, I just really want to point out, even when you have told them, listen, new studies have found that it is not a chemical issue anymore. So there's no chemical imbalance that's causing you to behave this way. It's you causing you to behave this way. They still revert back to medication. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't scream irresponsibility, I don't know what does.
Well, Arthur, go ahead. I think you wanted to say something. I can feel it from here.
You sound like a Scientologist, one of those crazy people that lives in a cult.
When I say medication, I mean mental health medication, rather.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it goes into the medical area as well.
I'm sorry,
too.
But when I have a migraine, I'm taking the painkiller. Sorry.
Like, you always come to me and you tell me.
Yeah, I
anyway,
do.
I'm like, well, it's your body. You do what you want.
It's interesting the responses I've had just from doing the Purif, and there's definitely two classes of people. Mm-hmm. One class is like, wow, that sounds fascinating. The other class is just like, what woo-woo shit are you doing? Real dismissive and a little patronizing too. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because, like, again, without doing those TRs, I could take a lot of that to offense. Mm-hmm. As well. If I didn't know what That's I true. Know, I could easily be swayed on my task. You know what I mean? I could easily be influenced to go against it. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting. Those people that are open to health will look at this and be like, wow, that sounds fascinating. Mm-hmm. How do I learn more? And then other people are like, yeah, you're an idiot. You're being delusional. There's so many dangers to doing what you're doing. Have you looked at the risks? And it's just like, come on. I've researched this before I went into it.
Yeah.
A lot.
And a lot. I'm going to go off on just a side reel here, but I think it's interesting how people look at Scientologist, independent Scientologist. It's the S word that all of a sudden, I mean, you don't even get out the second syllable. Mm. And then you're like, well, and I'm going to use this term. It's not what they use. I'll say what the other term is first, but I have to say it this way, is they look at Scientologists as indoctrinated / brainwashed.
Yeah.
And depending upon your awareness of things based off of your ability to study and to research and clear things up from a Scientologist or independent Scientologist viewpoint, it is who's indoctrinated when it comes to take a pill to mask the problem that you have, take a pill to make your brain feel better, take a, this sort of thing. Yep. And it's a weird thing because they're like, it's a cult. You're in a cult. Well, the word cult is in the word culture. What culture are you indoctrinated on versus what culture are we indoctrinated on? It's pots and kettles.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about a subject that with all that brainwashing stuff, there's an element of subconscious or unconscious thought involved. Whereas with Scientology, everything is conscious. You're researching the words with it. You're, you know, like, I don't understand how it could be even any more conscious than what it is.
Mhm.
Like, there's not even, you know, force applied or anything. It's just, well, the only thing is when you're dealing with personalities, that's really the big thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
and that
Mhm.
it also goes into this. I mean, you know, I'm gonna. There's one negative one that I'm gonna say is that uh, I have met the balance of the Scientologists that I've met do suffer from a bad case and know best. and they can be dicks.
Yeah.
You know, oh yeah, sure. And you know, they can shut you down. I don't agree with that, and I don't think that has anything to do with the subject of Scientology. I think that more comes more from the church side in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Because they can't grant beingness, which I mentioned earlier. But you know,
Mhm.
it's the indoctrination thing that has occurred about the subject is because, well, like we mentioned in other podcasts, is what's happened to the church and all that, and we've talked about that a lot in other podcasts. But you know, the ability, if you use the technology, the ability to perceive things as they really are, it's a real deal.
Mm.
And you start to look at things in life and you see things for what they really are. And when you talk to people about that, they go, "You're odd."
Yeah. Like news, for example. Like I
Yeah.
cannot watch news
Current events.
now
Yeah.
because in the past
Yeah.
I used to be like, oh, wow, really? Add opinions.
Hmm?
Now I've been able to differentiate between fact and opinion, and I'm like, just like, where do they get this from?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the
Yeah.
data? Where's the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the proof?
Right. Right. You know.
You know, apparently, you know, the words they use, you know,
Yes.
apparently appears to be,
Yes.
like,
Reaction. What was your reaction to the fire,
yeah,
sir?
Yeah, yeah, and they
yeah,
and
yeah,
they can
yeah.
make something so small when you really look at it. They can make something so small be so
Uh,
massive.
Right. Right. And
yes,
you know,
yes.
to
And not
that.
even true a lot of the times as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's complete
Yeah.
speculation, but they're treating it as fact.
and being basically
Yep.
being an analyst is just one of the many perks of being a Scientologist.
Right. You can't be, I mean, you know, you can either dazzle them with brilliance or baffle them with bullshit.
Yeah,
And to your point, and I'm sure Artie will have something to say about this. We got another a TV and we've been watching regular channel satellite TV
Oh
program.
no.
And when you get away from that for so long and
Why?
you get hammered by that advertising
yeah,
and you go, you know what, I don't miss this at all. You've mentioned it to me a couple times.
yeah.
It's just the ads, and you go, no wonder these people are so indoctrinated with this bullshit.
And you'd think to yourself, you know, well, wouldn't they, if they knew that it was turning viewers off, wouldn't they like stop the advertising? No, because research has shown that the more you repeat advertise to somebody, the more likely they are to buy something.
Yeah.
And that's why they do it. And I tell you, every night it's the same fucking ads all night long. It's ridiculous.
And that's another thing. And I've seen this a lot. A lot of Scientologists, independent Scientologists, me included, don't typically watch TV. If you watch something, you'll watch something without advertisements, and you'll just buy the episode or the movie or whatever because you're aware of that manipulation that's going on, as opposed to, I mean, you in the States, and I'm sure it's the same way in Australia, and here is you get a subscription to a satellite service and you're paying a monthly subscription to be advertised to. You don't, it isn't no ads. You still get ads. You're paying to watch advertisements. If it's a half hour show, the show is 18 minutes and 12 minutes of it is advertisements.
Never thought I'd say it, but thank God for Netflix.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And you know, generation
Well,
after generation.
even with Netflix, the way, so they've clicked onto it as well, because even a lot of the the newer material that comes out even on Netflix, they actually incorporate it into the series. So they may not actually be
Yes. Yes.
advertising as a traditional commercial, but there are so many agendas and concepts that they're incorporating. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can kind of pick it out. You can kind of see
Yeah.
a film that had a really good story, and then all of a sudden there'll be something thrown into it, and you're like, that really doesn't fit, but they've just thrown it in.
With Stranger Things,
It's
you could practically play a drinking game and be like, oh, spot the advertisement there, because they do things like
yes,
Coke and Pepsi
Coca-Cola, Burger
and
King.
yeah, all the junk basically.
Yeah, product placement, and it was, I mean, hot and heavy. And that's the
yeah,
interesting thing with the Scientologists, is their awareness is higher. And so they're spotting these things that other people would just go right over their head, but they would be, honey, do we have any Coke?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uber Eats.
but
Right. You get
but
something from the store.
even though you can spot it, it still doesn't make you immune from it,
Yeah.
No.
which is really interesting as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Well, it pisses me off.
Just because
and I think that makes me
just because we
resistant
can
to
see it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, at least the cool thing about spotting it is you can make a decision on it when you spot it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll be watching something and then I'll just see so much of it, I'll just stop, because I know if I continue, it's going to impact me somehow.
Yeah.
Look, you could start to feel the impact of these things on your body, and then I'll just stop. I'm like, enough.
Yeah.
Enough.
That I'm being manipulated feeling. And that's interesting, because the subject itself, and not that people make the distinction, but the subject itself, when you mention the word to somebody, all of a sudden they're like, hey, wait a minute, hold on. I don't know that I want to continue talking to you. They experience that as well, which we've gotten into as to why in other podcasts. So we won't go there, but they think it's a bad thing, it's a bad subject. Look what it does to you and all this stuff. But that's literally advertising to push people away from the subject.
Yeah.
That's what's happened. And that's really unfortunate. And that's part of the reason why we do these podcasts.
How would you say, because I always struggle with this, like we're always saying, yeah, there's so much bad advertising about Scientology, and yet we also say the church sucks. So how would you say it's different in that way?
Well, you have to go to the conditions of being: isness, alter isness, as isness, not isness. And for anything to persist, there's a lie behind it. It's an alter isness that people think it's bad when they don't know the first goddamn thing about it. When you go onto Reddit, I can spot those people from a mile away.
So we're talking the subject versus the corporation.
Because there's just like, I mean, you might as well consider that the news is one big advertisement. Here's what's going on in the world today. And they spend 22 minutes filling you full of propaganda on what they want you to think. What is that? It's an advertisement.
I guess what I'm saying is that how do we prove to people, to listeners, that we don't have vested interests by doing the same thing that the media is doing to the church, which is...
Well, when we just tell them, pick up a book and read it. If it's true for you, it's true for you. Don't believe the hype. Just try it. And if it works for you, well, then you know that it works. And if people won't touch that, I mean, it's just like some people will buy Fords instead of Chevys. There's nothing you can do about it. They just have a consideration about it. But we're taking responsibility for it and saying, look, we're not nuts. And if you listen to one or two podcasts or just a few minutes of each, you can see that we're pretty rational, sane people.
Yeah.
And we're talking about things in our lives and everything. We're just like everybody else. And that's, I mean, it's the same thing as racial profiling or religious profiling. We're all pink on the inside as bodies. And Hubbard came across these things and said, hey, this is interesting. This goes against what we're being advertised to is what we should be doing. And it's been happening in history for however many hundreds or 1,000 years or whatever, and said, check this shit out. I mean, that's basically what he did. And all we're doing with our podcast is we're saying this guy wasn't terribly off the mark at all on this stuff. But The powers that be sure want you to think that he was, because, well, we have other things in mind for you. You're going to come 2030, you'll be own nothing and be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
And
all we're trying to do is just say, check it out. And if it's true, it's true. If it isn't, it isn't. Go do something else. We're not trying to force you. Free courses, this, that. I mean, honestly, the podcast is just more about a platform to try and clear the air on the subject for anybody that wants to listen. And we get all kinds of posts on YouTube where they're like, it's a cult. And it's like, okay, there's another person that's uninformed.
Yeah. And I just want to say to the person that keeps asking, where's Shelley? How the fuck should I know? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. I even posted on there. I said, we'd like to know too. If you find out, let us know, and we'll put you on the podcast. I mean, it's
Isn't that
like some badge of courage to say
David's
that.
wife?
Say again?
Is that David Miscavige? Is that David?
Yeah,
Miscavige's
that's
wife?
his wife,
Yeah.
and he tossed her
Isn't
aside.
that how Lee Remney got kicked out, by asking that
Yeah,
question?
by asking where's your wife? How come we don't see her anymore? She was friends with her, and all of a sudden she stopped showing up to events and stuff. And well, that's a withhold. Who's withholding her? Is she withholding herself, or is Dave?
Yeah. Apparently they looked the legal people looked into it, and
and they paraded her out, and she said, I'm fine. But I mean, it comes down to, is it self-determined or is it other determined? I can't prove or disprove that any more than I can that there's an atmosphere on Mars, but I have my own opinions. So, these sorts of things, it's just people feel like we're initiates from a Scientological standpoint because, you eat that shit. Yeah, we do. And we like it. Tastes pretty good. And they think we look at them and go, you eat that shit? It's all relative to what you know and understand and can apply. And a Scientologist or independent Scientologist, they tend to apply this information that they've gotten, and they've found that it works for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever it is, you want to be a Catholic, that's fine. You want to do Scientology and be a Catholic, that's fine too. You want to be gay, you want to be a Scientologist, independent Scientologist, that's fine too. Or whatever you want to be. It doesn't matter for us.
I would say that Scientology, whatever I've undertaken, whether it was my understanding of my own religious background, being a Christian, not that I really am anymore, but a deeper understanding of the Bible that extends further than just sort of like a dogmatic belief kind of a thing. But yeah, even my business, whatever it's been, it has made me better at it. So to your point, whether you want to be a Catholic or you want to be whatever, it would help you tremendously in just being more of that.
Yeah, I'd have a better understanding of it. I mean, that was what Hubbard was good at, is he looked into other things and said, yeah, this has merit. This might so much. This doesn't have merit. Here's the data. Figure it out for yourself. I mean, that's what the whole thing's about. But it's funny to me how people they have a problem with people who want to look. I ran into that a lot when I was in high school and middle school and stuff like that. When I told people I was a Scientologist, it was like, "Ooh, you're weird." That
I think it's the I think it's the difference between comfortable and uncomfortable as well. Like, because for me to walk into the world of Scientology, I had to embrace a lot of fear towards the subject before. And I had to break through that and really confront that without even learning about confront at this stage, by walking into a church and learning about it. And it was really hard because I had all those things in my mind as well that I'd researched, don't do this and don't do that. And you talk to some people about what their thoughts are and people freak out. But then there's always that handful that are like, oh yeah, I spent some time in the church and, did a few courses and it really helped me with this and it helped me with that. They didn't go, as far as auditor or OT, but they were indifferent to the subject. Like they didn't really say it was bad. They didn't say it was good.
Mm-hmm.
They said they got a good results, but it wasn't for them long term, which is fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people, just flat out, oh, yeah, I had experience and it was some stupid story, and really insignificant in the scheme of things. But even for me to confront that took a lot. And then, you can kind of see some elements of the propaganda in the organization aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the subject itself, which is really different, the subject itself and the material is not driven by other people. It's the other people that sort of can give it a bad flavor. Whereas
Yeah,
the
what their
subject
spin.
itself is, yeah, yeah.
And,
And I
and
think as well, who's souping you as well, that can make a difference as well. Like a good supervisor will make
absolutely.
a big difference as well. Are they helping you with the words? Are they helping you? Like, are they making sure that you're doing it in order as well? Or are they putting you on such a high gradient that you're so overwhelmed and you're just constantly blowing? Um, those kinds of things can really put people off as well. If
Mm-hmm.
they haven't been taught how to look for misunderstood words, if they haven't been taught how to use a dictionary, or and let's be honest, the MUs, even if you just took that tech, will change your world completely.
Yeah,
Just
if nothing else, just misunderstood words, MUs.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they all. I mean, misunderstood words, and it's quite literally the truth. Misunderstood words have caused every alteration in history. Everything spun out of control from there.
Yeah.
Because it's the basis of an overt act. Just that one little
yeah.
thing. And
And
that's
even in scientific documents,
mm-hmm.
it's really interesting where there's a lot of words that are misunderstood put together as well,
Mm-hmm.
which actually makes the document incorrect because they've used the wrong words to describe things. And then other documents you look at and it's immaculate.
Mm-hmm.
They've chosen every single word so appropriate to follow the other word. It can't be flawed. And I think this is where, learning Scientology and then looking at the law, man, you could start looking for loopholes like nothing else because of the language that hasn't been quite clarified yet.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
You could start seeing these little things as well just by knowing how to look for it.
Yeah.
Um,
But they
and that's
do
just
that on
one
purpose, though.
tiny piece. Yes, they do. And the church does it as well. The
Yeah.
organization does it a lot. But they don't teach you how to look for that stuff until they've got you on staff. Then
Mm.
they start teaching you these things, and then it's too late. You've already joined, and then you're wondering why you're PTS and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
won't even teach you about PTSness
Yeah.
until you are PTS, and then they'll say it's because of your friends and family,
Yeah.
and there's
Well,
some of the traps.
and
Yeah.
that's another thing that you see in the church is you are derided for being a potential trouble source. You're an out ethics POS.
Yeah, they didn't even. I've heard stories of people like getting hounded and called and everything like that. Like at that point in time, before I started Scientology officially, like when I was just cheated on, I was in a very suppressive relationship. And he took me to the church to have my evaluation and stuff. I had a PTS graph. They didn't even bother with me.
Right.
They didn't call,
Yep.
they didn't email, they didn't do shit.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I
Yep.
got lucky.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's an issue there that you run into is Hubbard says you care about the person in front of you, and the first rule of handling somebody who's a potential trouble source, who's under some sort of suppression, is you educate them. Think about that.
Yes.
Think about that for a minute.
She literally didn't tell me that my graph was PTS. I took that graph
Mm-hmm.
as it was, and I gave it to you,
Mhm.
and then you were
I
the
remember.
one who said, well, this is an unstable graph. All you got to do is learn about it. And then I went on the, I think it was the ups and downs course or the PTSSP course, and boom.
Right. Right. So that's, I mean, it's even one of Hubbard's own concepts on the data evaluators course. Contrary facts
Mm.
is you educate somebody on things, and if you educate them in the wrong sequence, then it becomes, I mean, if you get the outside bigger picture, then you look at it and you go, I've been manipulated.
Mm.
Yep.
Because it's out, again,
Yep.
back to the data series, it's out sequence to,
Well, it's also metadata too.
well, exactly. I mean, and this is something that and this, people are saying, what does this have to do with how to spot a Scientologist? We're getting to this.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you understand data and the out points and plus points of something, we just mentioned some of the different types of out points. Now, out points themselves are just that. They are just out points, because it is you're looking for what's not right in a situation,
What's illogical?
what's illogical, because there is an ideal scene. And spotting a Scientologist, an independent Scientologist, is when you see somebody that can see something and go, oh, there's the source of the problem. Now we're going to go fix it. This is what we're going to do. And then they go and do something about it.
Mm.
Now, I mean, there are go-getters in life and stuff like that who never run across Scientology, and they're just able people, whether maybe they're naturally clear, which is possible, kind of rare, or they're just very able beings and kind of OT, or they are OT. I mean, it's a label. That's the thing.
And I think go
ahead.
Sorry, and I think as well, like even though we've got this as how to spot a Scientologist, I think you wouldn't see it without spending some time learning Scientology. Like you just wouldn't know it. And I never knew it until I started learning about Scientology. Then I could start seeing, oh, there's a bit of Scientology there. Oh, there's some Scientology there. Oh, check out that group and what they're doing. That's all Scientology based. Proper squirrel tech, where they've taken elements of Scientology and then made it their own package and labeled
Which
it as
has happened a lot.
different.
Yeah, and especially in the last 20 years.
More than people think,
Mm-hmm.
like way more than people think. Landmark is a really good one. That's a worldwide organization.
Yep.
That's Scientology derived. But the funny thing is, people will glorify Landmark and then bag out Scientology, and it's the same tech.
Right. It's very true.
Like, go figure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the unfortunate thing with this particular podcast is that word Scientology.
Yeah,
which is really unfortunate.
It is. It's become a stigma due to bad PR caused by the personalities involved, not the subject itself. And there is a certain degree of the data being out there on the internet. People have access to everything, and they probably shouldn't have access to everything. And I can say that that's very much the case, because if I have to take people in session and they want auditing and they've looked at stuff that they're not ready for, it causes a lot of problems that have to be fixed in order to do anything for them, because it is high power stuff, and you need to do it on the proper gradient, the proper approach. Otherwise, you're causing more problems than you are solutions. So, mismanagement has caused things to go awry, but it does work, and some people can't have the fact that it works. Some people don't like other people looking them in the eye. They look at that as a problem.
And because they have withholds.
Because they have withholds. So, how much of it is a bad thing, how much of it is a good thing, is dependent upon the person that is experiencing the application of the technology. I think that's kind of what it comes down to is, and there are bad apples out there. I know, I mean, I'm trying to think the one guy that got into the church and he got all kinds of people to invest all kinds of money in his investment schemes and everything. And he took a lot of upper tier, top shelf Scientologists' money, who's very similar to the Bernie Madoff scandal.
Mm.
And they fell for it hook, line, and sinker,
Yeah.
you know? And
I mean,
so
there's also suppression that occurs, and we've spoken about this within the independent field.
yeah.
People gunning other people, and just, you know, the third party thing, and it's become a competition. And
Yeah. Which is ridiculous when you got over 8 billion people on the planet. And, you know, I mean, you know, it's just,
I mean, there was one guy that came the fuck after us, for example, and you've never met him, I've never met him, and he just one day decided, you know what, I'm gonna make it my life's mission to third party this motherfucker, being you. And it's like he's got to be paid off or something, like by one of these other organizations. And he is currently promoting one of those organizations within his own group and in other groups. So that tells you something. There's such a suppressive asshole to do that, yet still can promote and all of that. I mean, it's
right.
Yeah.
Just
come now.
Just kind
there are no coincidences.
Yeah. So spotting a Scientologist is pretty easy, but like Arthur said, you have to know some of the basics of it. You can't base it off of, you know, just because you read it on the internet, it's true type of a thing. And that's the funny thing, is that if somebody is able and they can communicate and they treat you well, maybe they're a Scientologist. Maybe they're an independent Scientologist. If and they're successful, if they mention conditions in life, that's, you know, another one that we haven't mentioned.
Eric also does that.
Yeah, it's conditions. You know, the ethics conditions are very, very valuable if you understand them. But it isn't something that I've never ever seen any other technology outside of the Scientology, the subject technology, the ethics conditions, anywhere else in any other religion, philosophy, nothing. But they are factual and they truly work. And that's something that would be a huge indicator that somebody was a Scientologist and said, so what's your condition in life right now? How often have you had somebody that wasn't a Scientologist say that? I mean, you know, I mean, maybe Dr. Phil says, how's that working out for you? You know, that's as close as you're going to get.
As opposed to, are you taking medication for that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, one man's indoctrination is another man's education. And it's just, it's a matter of what the perspective is and the context and everything. And this probably will give people a better understanding of why we do and we behave the way that we behave. Is there any other?
The word responsibility.
Yeah,
I feel like we use that quite a bit.
Word.
And I think it's used differently from how a lot of other people use it. So a lot of other people use it if they're trying to enforce responsibility, like, you know, when we say just be responsible, I think it's a little bit different than that somebody else, because when somebody else says it, it might come across as almost patronizing, like, you know, it's something your parents say to you when you're young if you're not being responsible, right? With us, it's more of an encouragement, like how can you break free from that victim mode into I have full and total control of my life. So yeah, that's definitely another one. Something else which I mentioned in my first video which is sort of more like a maybe, but also a dead ringer. If they have clay in their study or in their office or whatever in their home, and it's not a child's room, and then you know, because we do clay demonstrations to help us understand things better, the data better. So that's another one. Yeah,
or you see a Dianetics book on their bookshelf.
Yeah. Or them always telling you, have you looked that word up? Have you gone to the dictionary?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that word mean to you? Have you cleared it?
Right. What does that word mean to you? Let's look that up. If you hear somebody say that, I mean, it's such a ridiculously logical thing to go grab a dictionary
Yeah.
and use it if you don't know what a word means, because they had them at school and stuff like that. They were hard to find. You had to go to the library to get a dictionary. There wasn't one in every classroom.
With us, we had to buy
Stunning.
our own. So
Right. And so that's, if somebody's looking up words all the time, probably a Scientologist, or asking you, what could you be responsible for? Like you said,
yeah.
what's the definition of responsibility? That type of a thing. Because responsibility, that's almost like a 4-letter word on planet Earth.
Mm.
Yeah.
Really, it really is. Responsibility, ethics, and morals. All three of those are pretty rare.
Well, even with Scientologists, though,
Yes.
I firmly believe what LRH said, which was ethics, then tech, then admin, right? And I tell you, the amount of times that I've said something to do with ethics and our views just go straight down. Like, it's just, nobody wants to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I make a post on Facebook or something, or a blog post.
Do a podcast with the word ethics in it, and it's a low listen to podcast and everything, because the podcast we did on self-discipline.
Yeah.
I was really surprised because I don't want to hear about it. Well, sorry, but but see this.
Well, then they're in denial, and it's like, oh, I don't need that.
Right, but see this herein lies the rub.
Yeah.
Is these are things that have to be addressed. These are things that you have to look at, and any of the things that we've mentioned in this podcast, they're all indicators that you're probably dealing with a Scientologist, or somebody that's acclimated, accustomed, educated, indoctrinated, whatever you want to use for it, on the subject, because they're so uncommon. Yeah. Now, my point in saying this is they're so uncommon because they're the things that matter the most.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say it. I'm just going to put it out there. And if somebody's getting you to look at something that's uncomfortable, well, it's uncomfortable for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that typically is there's something there you're not confronting. If somebody uses the C word, confronting, that's almost as bad as responsibility, if not worse. What are you not confronting about this situation, that relationship, your family member? There is no there, because you just don't. And if you mention the word confront to somebody, they typically think that means something in an aggressive war-like fashion. They don't understand that confronting is just looking at something for what it is.
Yeah.
I think, and responsibility falls into that as well.
It does. Mm-hmm. It does.
People think responsibility is a very doing word, where both words are very explorative to the self, as opposed to, facing someone and telling them what you think about them, right or wrong. It's the complete opposite. It's going inwards before you go outwards. It's taking responsibility for your own thoughts and actions. And quite often you'll find that once you do that, you don't have to do anything after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a difference between painfully honest and hurting somebody's feelings and all of that, and confronting and being responsible. That's not responsible and confronting to sit there and tell somebody, you know what you are, that's evaluation and invalidation. And that's what a lot of people think about responsibility and confront, when it's something completely different.
It's got to be other determined.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not the thing is like he says, what is it? What's that? The quote we talk about all the time. What is greatness? When we can, well, it's not, it is part of it, but it isn't. But you could love somebody despite all of their faults and all of that, and still grant them beingness. That's the whole point
Yeah.
of the matter. And that's
Mm.
not easy to do. It's not easy to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it is
No, it's not.
definitely the highest road that you can take, and a hard line to walk. But if you do it, you'll find that you're a lot happier in life. And that's what it's all about. Is if you see somebody, and I think this needs to be said. You see somebody and they're doing well and they're happy. They kind of are a Scientologist, but they're not. If
Mm.
they take care of everybody around them and they're generous, but they're not a doormat. They're successful. They help other people be successful. And the reason why I'm saying this is that Scientology, the subject, a lot of it is not so common sense.
Right.
Treat others as you want to be treated. Take care of your family. It's the way to happiness, Respect your elders, take care of your family, take care of your body, take care of all of your dynamics, whether you use the word Scientology or not.
Mm.
It's these things are just they're manifest, they're apparent, they're that you just are. And you do run across these people. They've never heard the term Scientology or anything like that. They're successful in their business, but they don't take care of people in order to have a successful business. They contribute their time, they donate, they educate, all of these things. And then and that's one thing I think is really interesting. There aren't many of them. There aren't many Scientologists because they tend to take some of the information like exchange. You've got fair exchange, you've got criminal exchange, you've got exchange in abundance. They tend to use that information like, well, I'm not going to donate my time to a good cause, or I'm not going to donate my money to these people because that would be out exchange. They need to get their exchange in. No, 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 no. What did Hubbard do?
Mm.
Hubbard, he made money. He took the money that he made from writing his stories, he invested in Scientology. And he said the work was free, keep it so. That's how everybody else should live. Because he donated his time towards this, because he'd already made enough money to do this stuff as it was, and then said, here's my gift to mankind. I personally think that because I'm just going to say it, and I think I said it in one other podcast, some of the most selfish people I've ever met in the world were Scientologists. Selfish.
Because they use those kinds of statements as service facsimiles.
Yeah, right. I can do it. You can do it. You suffer up your own path. I had to suffer up my own path. Wait a minute. That's not what is greatness. What is greatness is you give a person a leg up, take them in for a Dianetic session, or I do know some Scientologists, whether they're Dianetic auditors. I know auditors that have taken people in countless hours for free, pro bono, and turned people's lives around. Why? Because they could. That's what Hubbard did. That's what Hubbard did. And you see people who are very, very successful that do that stuff, they just become more successful.
Yeah, for me it's difficult because I do agree about, giving back to community and, all of that, but I also do agree with the exchange thing. So for example, me early on, I couldn't really pay for auditing and stuff like that. So instead I helped with the business, and through that I believe I had got an exchange in. Unfortunately, because I've been with you so long, and the business, I have seen how when you give people things for nothing, it's not appreciated. And therefore, it's kind of just like, well, I don't really care about this. So I don't,
That is a risk.
Yeah.
That is a risk. And Hubbard talks about that too. And I think that's why he mentions exchange. But that's another, again, that's another thing that you can spot a Scientologist with, is when somebody says, I mean, it's unfortunate that it's this way, but you see Scientologists and like, well, what are you going to do for me? What do I get out of it?
Well,
Man, I have a problem with that sometimes. Do you have to always get something out of it? Do you?
Right. Well, if it's like little things that's gonna definitely, better situations, then fine. But I think the onus is on the other person who is getting things, for them to step up and be like,
Sure. That's
how can I help
undeniable.
you? If I can't offer a monetary exchange, then can I maybe promote you or something like that? And through that, it helps. So I
Sure.
think those are the people that do deserve. But I think I'm talking about the ones that just sort of expect things. They just
Yes.
have like, oh well, you're a Scientologist and you're an auditor, so you should want to help mankind. So, without any intention of helping any way back.
Right. Artie, you look like you want to say something.
I think there's another side to it as well, because some people in such a vulnerable state, to be gifted something that has impacted their lives so strong can actually create an element of guilt as well, where they
Yes.
can't fathom how they could repay back, so they'll just completely disconnect
They feel
because they're just
overtly.
so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just so overwhelmed by the gift they've received, and I think that one is probably more common than we think. Because from my end, I've helped out so many people pro bono. I've probably helped out more people than I've charged over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be literally years before I hear back from them.
Yeah.
And it'll just be like a message just saying, you changed my life back, 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I never was able to repay you or thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had another lady actually, which I need to chase up. I helped out like 2 years ago, and while I was doing the Purif, I actually pulled out from an expo because I just didn't have the energy to do the 2 days. And I was sharing a space with a lady, and I don't even know who this lady is, but apparently I helped her out 2 years ago, and she came to to the lady that I shared space with, gave her details to pass on to me, because now she could afford to pay me. And this was like 2 years ago, and this only happened a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, it was like 2 years ago. Like, who cares?
Right.
The
Yeah.
fact that it's come around that way,
Yeah.
and I think from your end as well, helping so many people. I think the hard thing I found really difficult to deal with as well is not getting feedback. So you
Mm-hmm.
actually don't know if you've done good or not,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be really difficult to handle as well. So I think you just put it out there, and that's it, because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to help with your magnetism, and it's going to help with your heart, and it's going to help in so many ways. Um, I think there's more to it, and I can understand how it can become a bit edgy and you can question it and become resentful towards some situations. But I think when you do get those particular people, it's a no-brainer from the start. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you just know straight from the start.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that the trick is catching that. But like any business, any business, because it is a business, um, you start to learn the people that are going to try and rort you.
Yeah.
There's certain language they use, there's certain energy they project. Experience and practice.
Right.
I mean, I could agree with that. Like, I've personally I have this situation where there's somebody who uses or has been, especially lately, been using an abundance of my time, and it's been my failure to set that boundary with
Mm,
them, because they've just been, they want advice, they want advice, they want advice, but they haven't contributed a single thing. This has been going on for about 2 years. But it's been especially bad lately. Like, this person just seems to sort of depend on my advice as an independent Scientologist a lot. But like, and I would be okay with it if it had this friendship element where it was like, how are you, and online friend kind of a thing. But literally, this person, I just exist for them as a terminal to sort of get feedback on. And I've been telling them the whole time, listen, the only way you're going to fix your life is not through these decisions that are conscious. You're going to have to go to the root of the problem and try and solve so that it doesn't keep repeating itself. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so yeah, I get it. I get how it can be sort of difficult to cut ties and stuff with people who might not fully be uh, wanting to do any sort of exchange.
Yeah, well, and
And I,
go ahead.
sorry, and I think because exactly what you're saying, Lisa, I struggled with a long time. Like, and I'd feel guilty about it. I'd feel like a real dick if I didn't want to work with them. But then they were making me PTS.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Now that I know what PTS is, they were actually making me PTS. So I suppose the real question is it them or is it you? Because there's nothing wrong with saying, I cannot help you. I'm not suitable to help you. You know what I mean? And then you'll see, then you'll see how committed they really are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and in these situations, when a person is really applying the subject of Scientology, it's not easy because there are a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration. And being the best person you can be, whether you're a Scientologist or you're some other religion or you're no religion at all, is that's I can't speak for every being on the planet, but you should always strive to be the best person you can be. And if somebody is or was taking the subject of Scientology and applying it and using it, they're trying to better their lives. As much as anybody who is looking into any other religion or philosophy or the combination thereof. And you can't fault a person for that. And anybody that is trying to fault a person for that, well, they need to take a look at themselves and do not judge lest ye be judged.
Yeah. And I'd encourage anyone out there to not listen to opinions about Scientology. That is the worst possible thing you could do, because you're basically agreeing to somebody else's consideration. And there's all kinds of considerations out there, and there's so many things, like so many beliefs and stuff. What you want to do is see what is factual, and the only way you can do that is through doing it yourself.
That's right. You have to look for yourself, and you have to sift through this information, and we do the same thing. And we try to keep a code of honor in and everything like that. Never fear to hurt another just cause, but never abandon your friends.
Yeah.
Also, and it's tough. It's tough to keep those two things in mind. And there's lots of other datums we've mentioned in other podcasts, but I hope this has helped clarify things for people as to some of the things that the subject of Scientology presents people, and how you can spot these people. And they may not be as bad as you think. They might be misinformed if they're in the church, but they are decent people, and they're there for a reason, that they want to better their own lives and the lives of others, almost exclusively. Almost exclusively. And it's not just for Scientologists, but we're all trying to make our own way in this universe. And some look for answers, and some point fingers. So, in closing, anybody have anything they want to add?
I think Anthony wanted to.
Arthur.
So let's say, yeah, that's right. I get called all sorts of things: beautiful, handsome, Anthony. But let's say somebody fresh off the street has a genuine interest in learning about Scientology. What's a good way for them to dip their finger in to what services AOGP offers? Like, is there a particular course that could enroll in to get a fairly decent understanding of?
I'd say the basic Scientology principles course.
Yeah.
No, it's a free course. And
Okay.
that
I
gives
don't
you
think
the basics.
And my channel is
okay,
another
just a good
resource.
Yeah, or the
yes,
Scientology Girls channel
but
on
to
YouTube.
have like
Hands
but to
on.
have actual hands on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
she's got over 40, God, it's
mm,
probably close to 40 hours worth of
Yeah.
content on there.
But I think he means like courses, like doing,
Yeah, I mean, to
yeah,
get familiar with the
actually
subjects,
getting a
watch
sample.
the videos, and
Yeah.
then you can go do the basic Scientology principles course. You want to get some free auditing and not have to deal with another person. Do the free self-analysis course, which is based off the book Self-Analysis and is included on the course.
And we
And
also have free books, and we have all the lectures
all of
by L. Ron Hubbard.
4,600 lectures for free on our website. We've got all of the technical volumes in their appropriate color, their appropriate text, nothing changed. Uh, you name it. It's all there. It's just a matter of looking, pressing a button, downloading, and having the self-discipline. And I think that's probably the most uncommon thing. Sorry to mention it, but self-discipline.
And that's another thing that I want to add. You had said that it's everything's unchanged, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're new and you want to study Scientology, you should know that the stuff that's in the church currently has been altered. So the stuff that we have is still all of the old stuff. Why that's important is because L. Ron Hubbard, you probably know this already, but he passed on. And after he passed on, there were edits. So you've got to ask yourself, whose idea was it to change what was there and what worked? And this goes back to fact and opinion. It was somebody's opinion that this should be altered and this should be changed and stuff from the original technology of L. Ron Hubbard. So just thought I'd put
Right.
that in there.
And then he didn't want it changed.
Yep.
And I mean, we're looking, let's face it.
KSW.
Less than 2 years from now, L. Ron Hubbard has been not walking this earth. He passed away in January of 1986. We're at less than 38 or more than 38 years ago. And a lot of things can happen. And a lot of the changes happened starting around 1979, 1980, which we mentioned in the remote viewing what happened to Scientology podcast. A lot of this stuff has been changed, and you need to understand that these changes precipitated a lot of the behaviors that you see that give Scientology a bad name. It doesn't deserve that bad name. Arthur mentioned this earlier. So take that into consideration and realize that a duck is not a duck unless it quacks. And the quacking does it work? And the only way to find that out is to just spend a little time on it. Take an hour or two. It doesn't take long for you to go, yeah, I've seen that in life before. Nobody ever mentioned that. This guy did. And you'll see what we mean. It's that simple.
Well said. Yeah.
So for Scientology Girl, myself and Arthur, we hope you've
AKA Mr. Handsome.
I'll also accept sexy, just saying.
Yeah, you look a lot younger after the Pure. So.
Thank you, John.
So, and your smile's brighter. So anyway, and for Arthur, aka Mr. Handsome, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you have any questions, send us a question on the website in the little chat box in the bottom right, or on the YouTube channel. And like Hubbard says, look, don't listen. I think that's the most important thing. Look, don't listen. You have to make your own mind up, and everybody has an opinion, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's based on anything in fact. So take care, everybody. Namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.